Welcome to Jazz Biz 101, where we explore and share our journey as minority entrepreneurs with an emphasis on music business. Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us today for the, this is going to be the 5th episode of Jazz Biz 101. We're joined here with Rob Duguay, and it's such a pleasure to have him here today because not only is he a great musician, but he's also like a curator and an activist and a whole host of other things that he does in his life. And we just want to thank him for being here today. Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Rob, thank you for coming into the show. I know you are in Mexico City right now. Is that right?
Correct. Sí, senor. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm honored, truly.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, it's not a problem at all, man. So how's COVID going down there? Like what's the situation with you right now?
It's great. It's alive and well. No,
Thriving.
they actually we just went. I'm in Mexico City now, and they just went back to kind of a red alert, which means that the hospitalization rate is above 63% or 64%. So it's, they're back into the red zone, which is not a good thing. And I've been down here for a few months, and it was cool, quote unquote cool. There's most of the clubs were still closed and certain restrictions, but it was a little more free. But now they went back to like, okay, 5 p.m. the restaurants are closed. You can still go eat lunch at a restaurant, and eat outside. I think that the weather makes it a little safer than New York's per se. But anyway, so it's kind of crappy down here, but life continues on, and that's the vibe.
Yeah, I mean, it's things are going, in terms of cases and all that in New York is getting bad too as well. And it's a thing that we're all having to deal with it, and we're glad to hear that you're doing all right, man. And man, it's very interesting. I think we have several topics we want to talk with you. You're a guy that we can ask about music, we can ask about the industry, we can ask about, we want to definitely, get the right answer, the right questions for you, to really take advantage of having you on the show. Peter, what topic do you want to hit?
I know
first?
There's so many things, but I think just for the audience, maybe we can just, give a rundown of kind of like what you have done so far in your life. I mean, it's just been incredible. So I know we're all like alumni of William Patterson.
That's right.
And for some reason we keep getting alumni of William Patterson on the show, but maybe because we're the best or something. I don't know.
I gotta learn that. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So yeah, maybe you could just give a short rundown of like, step by step, what have you done? And what I know there's so many organizations you're part of as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess I could start. Yeah, we can start at William Patterson, and I finished up there in 2007, and I was of course performing and eager to perform, but I also was, I also didn't have any money. I was like, all right, I can't really live in New York City without a job or without knowing that I'm going to be playing a lot. So I randomly found this job at Jazz Standard at the wonderful jazz club, which is where we met, Peter. You reminded me recently. And so I kind of was like, all right, well, I'm probably not going to pay the rent just by performing in New York City as a newcomer. And so what I did was just get this job in the center, in the spider's web, as I have been calling it. And just kind of let the scene come to me in that way. So I got to learn a lot about everything, and I got to meet all the constituents, the musicians, the fans of the music, sometimes the record label owners would walk in. And so I got to really meet a all the constituents of the music. And I thought that was, I mean, it was kind of a life-saving approach, because then other things started to stem from that. The reason why I even mentioned jazz standard is because all these other opportunities came from it. So, for instance, you guys asked me about the Swing, which is one of the organizations that I helped to run. And really, there was just this super nice man named Jay Seiden, and he would come into the shows on Tuesdays because his wife had bridge night. So and he was like this older Brooklyn, real badass Jewish Brooklyn New Yorker, and he'd come in real kind of gentleman, and he would just be like, "Oh yeah, it's bridge night, so I get my jazz and my bourbon, so send me a bourbon," and whatever. And so whatever, we just kind of became friends over the years. And then he says, "Rob, you're a smart guy. What do you think musicians need? What do they need, And I'm like, "Well, shit, they need everything, And he said, "Well, what about healthcare? Is that a good thing? You think if I set up musicians with cheap healthcare or free healthcare, like, was that dude, that'd be amazing, He's like, "Well, I know some doctors, and maybe we can start. You can help me run something." He looked into it, and it was, of course, a ton of red tape, like insurance and God knows what else. If you're trying to like insure people, it's like, all right, do you want to be held liable for treating someone or something like that? So we went away from that. We said, well, how about we bring music into schools? Because I was like, listen, musicians just need gigs. That's really just what they want. They want to play and they want to be paid well.
They want to work, yeah.
And so that's like kind of the musician thing. But then he had the idea like, well, let's bring music into schools where they don't have any music. And so we just started cold calling like he knew a couple people in the school board, the Board of Education. So we talked to a couple of principals. Anytime we met red tape, we're like, forget it. But some principals would say like, wow, that'd be amazing. We'll have like a huge concert in our auditorium and bring all the, 3rd through 6th grade or like 6th through 8th grade, whatever. We did a bunch of different age levels. But literally I started booking people like Wycliffe Gordon, Clarence Penn, James Wideman, our buddy from William Patterson. Just like I started just booking like all these like really heavy players to go play at schools. And then that kind of evolved into working with the students even more. So instead of going and doing like a one-off concert, we started doing, more like work or like 8 weeks of clinics with the kids, like either teaching, we had a tap dance program. We had a choir. We had African drumming program. And anyway, so it's just one of these things where we kind of talk with the schools. We also, even went deeper. We're like, hey, why should it stop at the music room? Why don't we get the English class to start writing about poetry based on like Harlem Renaissance? And why don't we have the art department make a huge backdrop so it looks like we're in like a Harlem Renaissance scene or something like that? So we started like doing these grandiose productions, and it was really just Jay, and Jay was the money guy, and I was like the kind of the liaison, whatever, between Jay obviously and the teachers and of course the students. I would say, let's do this or let's do that. So man, that was just a ball, and that all stemmed from Jazz Standard. And then, I'm kind of rambling but about the Swing, because I don't get a lot of chance to talk about that program. But, and then Jazz Generation, I figured you'd ask about too. That actually is a program run by James Polsky, who is the original founder of Jazz Standard. So when I quit Jazz Standard, I was like, all right, I worked here for 7 years. I've had enough of vacuuming the carpets. I want to like do my own thing and go into my own musical realm. Of course, I was performing the whole time and composing and all this kind of stuff. But I really was like, all right, I'm done. I'm done with the, you know, 5 to 9, not the 9 to 5. I only worked like 4 or 5 hours a day. But I'm done with my 5 to 9. And so I quit there. And like 2 weeks later, James Polsky, the original founder, who was not involved in the operations of the club, but I had met him, more than a dozen times, let's say. And he's a jazz drummer himself, and he's like a super angel for the scene. Honestly, he's done a ton of stuff to keep musicians paid. Actually would be a great a guest on your program as well. But yeah, so James called me up and said, hey man, I've been thinking about running this nonprofit. And really he had the idea when he grew up in New York City. He's like, man, I used to walk down the street and it would say Hank Jones Duo at this Italian restaurant. And then like this guy here, Tommy Flanagan here, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, dude, I would just walk down the street and it was like Jazz Central, even in a random neighborhood. There's like top quality jazz at these like restaurants and bars, not even at the major clubs. And he was like, man, we need to make this happen again. You know, we need to pay cats to play in these like smaller places. And I was like, dude, I play in like probably 20 of those spots that don't pay that well. So I already know a ton of places. If you want, we can just augment some of the places I already know. And he also asked me, like, do you feel comfortable, just going knocking on doors and going to new neighborhoods? And I was like, dude, that's what I do. I do that already. So he basically wanted to pay me to do what I already did. And I was like, man, this is a call from the heavens, I swear.
That's right.
So long story short, that's been running for like almost 7 years, actually, approaching in the spring or in the winter. And we've given about at least $1.5 million through me has gone directly to musicians, like $50 at a time. So we basically take all these $50 gigs and turn them into $100 gigs.
You supplement them.
That's pretty much how simple it is, honestly. And we go into these places like mostly mom and pop shops that love jazz, but they don't have the money to pay cats well. And so we say, all right, you've been having jazz at your spot for 10 years. They treat the musicians with respect. They give them an extra couple beers. They give them whatever food they have. And those are the types of places that we go into. If people are being rude to musicians or not, excuse me, they're not treating them well, then I'm like, dude, we'll find you another gig. Don't worry. Like, we're not gonna, because we don't want to be associated with a place. If we send somebody to sub, like if I send you guys and you're like, wow, the owner was kind of a jerk, man. And like, oh yeah, they told us we couldn't have a beer after we played, or like stuff like that. I was like, no, we're not sending our musicians to places like that. So
Right.
that's kind of the gist. Those two organizations have been a major part of my life, and that's the vibe there.
Man, that's amazing. I love the way that this organization you're talking about that really supports the musicians directly. Like it's about that. It's about keeping the music happening and taking care of the musicians. It seems like it's definitely it's something that you've been really trying as a musician yourself. You've been trying to take responsibility, or really put in your energy on that. Man, on that topic, could you talk about how is it that how is it that you got involved so much in the business side of things? Was this because I understand you also have business degrees, right? Like on top of being a musician, having a music degree. What was
Yeah.
the point that I know you mentioned briefly about how you said, hey, I don't have money. I got into the jazz standard and everything, but like really, was this something, being involved in this organization, is something that you were already thinking beforehand that you were like, I want to do something like that? Or how did you get into it?
Good question, man. Yeah, so I had this. I did do a business degree at the University of Vermont, an international international business management, it's called. And really, I did that because I was like, just conceptually, I thought of my life, and my parents, of course, were a big factor in the decision too. They're kind of like, you're good at music, but you can always do music, like basically. I think so. My parents were definitely a factor, but I also thought that way too. I was like, yeah, like, I don't know, something about studying music. I played classical piano for 10 years. I had done a lot of studying. And I had only just started to play the bass before going to college. So I actually didn't necessarily think, like, all right, I'm going to go do a music degree in bass. Like it really never occurred to me at that age, leaving high school. And I was good at math. And I think that I had the idea that a business degree, you can do anything you want with it. So it's like, if you have a business degree, I can open up a cafe. Not that I wanted to do that, but you can open up a cafe. You can start a podcast. You can do so many things with a business degree. When I started to think of other degree, because I was like, man, I really like what was it? Oh, physics. I liked physics too. There were certain subjects that interested me in high school. I was like, man, physics is cool, and languages is cool. I really like studying French, that kind of stuff. I was like, but when I thought about career-wise, I was like, well, I don't necessarily want to be a French teacher in high school. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but no, it's just like, I didn't think of that for me, and same with physics. I was like, I don't think I know enough about physics to be like some badass scientist or something. So I was like, all right, business can take me to where I want to go, no matter where it is. And music, I did know that music was in my path. And I firmly believe that if you know that, then you can make a left and a little right, but you're still on that musical path, So whether I open up a jazz club one day, whether I, keep running this organizations that I do, whether I become a teacher, it's all about the music, and I'll be surrounding myself with the passion.
Man, that's a beautiful way of thinking about it. I think it's going to help a lot of people listening that are thinking about, a lot of different paths. Because nowadays, it's definitely, this music requires us to be a little bit more versatile. Just performing 100% of the time is like top 1% of like jazz musicians, right?
Yeah.
So, did you feel like your time at the Jazz Standard, if maybe you could just go into your role there a little bit more? Because I don't, not everyone I think knows about it, but did you feel like that was helping you to understand a lot of the behind the scenes, and was that kind of like a motivational factor to get involved inside all these organizations? Because a lot of people don't know that a lot of this it's not just like getting the gig, but like a lot of it is like meetings and going out and finding the work, and that takes up basically almost all your time sometimes. And like you said, left and right here, musician, and then okay, now I gotta sit in all these meetings and make these things happen. So
yeah, right.
Let's go into that.
Yeah, so my position was the maitre d at Jazz Standard, and that's the the proverbial door person. I was like the door guy, basically.
That's
and
right. Yep.
So it's a cool position for somebody who, and I didn't have a server experience. I don't know how to carry 3 plates. I'll drop them on some guests, but so there's some certain talents in the restaurant industry that I did not have, but this was perfect for me. It was like, so it kind of was, it's almost like a meeting or something. And I'm supposed to coordinate between the guests and the staff that at our place. Supposed to try to make everybody have a nice time. I'm the face of the club, is what I was told by my superiors. They're like, you're the face of the club, so when people walk in, you make sure they have a good time. And for me, that wasn't a hard thing. I did have some colleagues who came in and out, or people who I saw working with me. I was like, wow, they really don't want to be here, or like for them it was just a job. Some of them, 98% of the people that I worked with were fabulous. And even though they weren't involved in the jazz world, they were great faces of the club too. But I did, I noticed a few people. I'd be like, wow, these people really don't care about the jazz scene or about making sure that people are happy. And I think I did take a lot from my business degree. I got to study in France, and the hospitality in France is very different. It's also very natural to them. And they're kind of like hustlers in a sense, like when you walk down the street and someone's like, hey man, come on, let me talk to you for a minute. And you're like, well, like you either feel offended, like, hey, don't bother me. Or you're like, oh, that guy seems kind of cool. Like, yeah, let's hear what this bum has to say, because some bums will stop you and they just like want to tell you a joke. And then they don't even ask for money. They're like, all right, bye. Like, and you're just like, wow, I'm so glad I stopped to talk to that bum. Like,
wow, really interesting.
But so I'm definitely going on a tangent, but it's all related to how do you make people feel when they're strangers and they walk up to you. So for instance, some couple, they're going on a date and they're like, wow, this a jazz club, like let's go see what's going on. They don't know who's playing. They almost don't care who's playing. Yeah. They want to have a cocktail and a cute little place to sit next to a candle and hold hands or something. So, and then I'd be the one that they'd come down and see. I'd be like, hey guys, how's it going? They're like, oh, cool, doing well. What's going on here? And I'd be like, well, shit, tonight's like this awesome Cuban band. And like, it's going to be so much fun. It's only $20 or $25. And why don't you guys come on in and I'll get you like a killer table. And they're like, yeah, sounds good. What do you think, honey? All right, great. Let's do it. And so yeah, that was kind of my function, was to make sure that people wanted to come in. And of course, there's, probably 50% or more of the people coming in already knew they were coming, explicitly for the Cuban band or whoever it was playing.
Right.
But so, yeah, I think that it was a fun thing for me to do, and then get involved. It wasn't a big step to get involved with someone. So for instance, I'm a musician, like you're saying too. So in walks this guy, Jay, who started About the Swing, just for instance, and we start to become kind of friends. And what did that do? Through me, he's given more than $1 million. And this is not even Jazz Generation. This is another one. Through me, he's hired all these groups to go play for kids. And we've touched like literally tens of thousands of students in New York City. And he's so underground, like he doesn't care. We'd be in an auditorium and we got like Wycliffe Gordon. All the kids are dancing. Winard Harper, I think, I know you play with Winard. Yeah, we hired Winard a bunch, and the kids are going crazy. Oh, you guys know how to dance the Bayadugi or whatever? And he's like, this is actually an African dance. And so the kids are getting up, they're dancing and stuff. And I look next to Jay, I'm like, Jay, we have 100 12-year-olds dancing to jazz music right now in Harlem. And I'm like, dude, we got to get the freaking New York Times here. Like, this is like amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And sure. And he's like, Rob, we're doing it for the kids. He's like, I don't give a shit about the New York Times. I'm like, wow. So, and it all ties into like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do in your afternoons? Like, yeah, I could sit at home and play the bass all day. But it might turn into like, hey, Rob, can you go up to Harlem and meet with this teacher, and can you guys strategize a small curriculum? And then can you hire Winard? Can you do this? So, you spend a little time on the phone, you spend a little time doing emails, you spend a little time on the subway away from your instrument. But for me, it was all tied into what I want to do and furthering the music. If you can get 150 kids dancing to jazz music, all of a sudden the next time you're playing in Harlem, they might walk by and be like, "Oh man, these guys are awesome." And at the very least, they might make your day, or might maybe even throw a couple bucks in the hat or whatever. So
Right.
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 Man, your positivity is the first impression is so important. And I
mhm.
remember when I came to the Jazz Standard, and this was like one of my first times. And I remember my friends were like, "Oh, there's a student discount here, right?" I said, "Great," took out the William Patterson ID card. And you're like, "Oh, you guys are from William Patterson," And I was like, "Oh yeah, I went there too." And we're like, "Oh shoot." And you were like, "Yeah, let me show you guys like a really nice table, for you guys. No problem. Like we'll get you in." I just remember that feeling, and that made me want to come back every single time.
Yeah, cool.
It was like on top of just obviously the music, it was just the entire experience was really
Mhm.
nice. And I think you bring that positivity and that kind of outreach into everything that you do and anyone that you talk to. And
Very
maybe,
kind.
yeah. And I think that's a really positive trait and maybe very helpful in trying to make a lot of these things happen, trying to get these gigs and
Mhm.
trying to, get the funding, that's
For
really
real.
a big part of it.
So really appreciate that.
To not to cut you off, but to further exactly what you're saying, and one of our professors, you guys were both with Harold Mayburn, right?
Mm. Yeah,
So Harold Mayburn, he called us all professor,
that's right.
but he told us he's like, I'm not just crazy calling you professor. He's like, no, he's like, when you play this music, you're an ambassador, and you need to take this shit seriously.
Mm.
He's like, you are the one who's gonna be making more people, because Dizzy Gillespie, he didn't meet everybody. He met millions, but he didn't meet everybody, and everyone's got to have their own network. If you grew up in Texas or Mexico or in Jersey, Connecticut, Vermont, where I was studying, it's like wherever you go, you're gonna be the one to be like, no, actually, jazz is what you need to listen to. We gotta make these converts and stuff on a crusade, the Jazz Crusaders. Um,
For real. Yeah, that's a man. As you mentioned, Winar Hartford, that's something similar that I remember hearing from him. Just
mhm.
as as musicians that we, Winar, it's always been about the community and doing jam sessions and bringing, embracing new musicians to this music. I remember him saying, "Hey man, like, hey man, we got this thing happening. We want to do this. What do you think? Like." And he was like, "Man, we all got to do something. We all got to just be, putting the music out there. It's not, it's about the contributions that we all put for this music that we want to give to people, right?" And man,
Mhm.
it really it connects, and I see how you work with Winard too as well, with other musicians that really truly want to put this music out there for people, to better
Yep.
people's lives. So
Now, is that
Yeah.
keyed up? That is keyed up different than jazz? Are they all connected? Like,
Keyedup is an entity of Jazz Generation. Yeah. We actually
okay.
just formed an umbrella called Jazz Generation, but Keyedup is what I started with James. But James had already started these two other programs for children, the Jazz Discovery Program, and whereas kids took field trips to Jazz Standard on like a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon from a school. They would take a school bus, go to Jazz Standard, and there would be like some heavyweights playing at 11 in the morning, teaching them about the music. So that was one program they started way back in the late 90s. And then the Jazz Standard Youth Orchestra is where the mostly high school kids play music on Sunday afternoons at Jazz Standard. Um, so we decided to form an umbrella of those three entities, including Keyedup, which is the newest of the three. But yeah, Winard, we've sponsored Winard over at Moore's Lounge in New
Moore's,
Jersey
that's right.
for a number of years, and that's a prime example of a place that loves the music. They're a mom and pop shop, don't have a ton of they'd love to pay the musicians 500 a head if they could, but they just simply can't. So that's where we step in and just augment their payment.
And Brightside as well, right? In Jersey City?
Brightside, we're there. We've been in a number of places in Jersey. I think we're only in 2 now. Yeah, Moores and Brightside. But we've cycled in and out of at least 5 to 10 more.
Man, that's pretty amazing. To know that not a lot of people knows that all the jazz angels behind, if you want.
It takes
I mean,
a lot.
man, like, yeah, like I met, I met a couple of people that I'm like, oh yeah, this person's supporting this program, this person is supporting this. It's an interesting vibe how this music moves people that much, right? To do things that are, sometimes really hard to put together, and they want to do it. I've met a couple like James Pensula,
Yeah,
like
James.
yourself,
James, yeah.
like just, even musicians themselves too. They just, okay, I'm gonna do it for the music, and I'm gonna do it for the people. It's very,
Mhm.
very interesting to how do you see this evolving, man? As what do you want to see in not only in New York, but maybe in other places, that other communities that you've interacted with? Do you want this to grow? Do you want this? How do you want people to contribute to this? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, man, great. Yeah, we want this to grow and grow and grow and grow. And there's way more demand than we have loot to give away. So the ideal thing that happens is that we create scenes. So for instance, let's say Moore's, they only have jazz once a week, which is not true. I think they have music more than one night. But let's just say that they have jazz once a week on Friday night. Let's just argue. And then what we want, and we help them give a little money, right? But let's say that Friday nights become so wildly popular and people are just throwing loot in the bucket and they're selling, all of a sudden they realize that their bottom line is doing better. They say, wow, Friday nights are hopping now. We're selling mad cocktails and food and whatever. So then they say, well, how about this? We can afford to pay the musicians on Friday now. Can we use your money to pay musicians on Saturday now? And we say, yeah, of course. So then now they got Friday night, and then Saturday night. Not only is it the hot spot to be, in Jersey, but that's now 2 nights for musicians that are getting better paid. So instead of one $50 gig that they were doing before they joined Keyedup, now they have 2 gigs for $100 a piece. So they essentially the musicians just quadrupled their monthly pay or their weekly pay if they play their weekly. From before joining Keyedup. And ideally they would become a 7 nights per week spot where it would just hopping all the time, and they make enough money where they don't need us anymore. And then what do? We say, hey, we love you, we're here for you, but now we're going to start the place down the street or over in another town. And ideally, of course, we're seeking donors, man. I mean, we want people to give to this music, and it really doesn't take a lot of money for someone who's a millionaire to say, well, I'm going to sponsor a trio gig in my neighborhood. We like it to be like in these different communities. So if someone's like, I want to see a jazz trio down the street for me at some cafe, and we say, okay, well, it literally, if you do the math, 150 times 52 is 7,800. So we're talking about $8,000 a year that they can say that's half the payment, and the other half always comes from the venue. We have this 50-50 partnership with Moore's, places like Moore's and Brightside. Tommy at Brightside, he pays half and we pay half, and that's how it comes together. So, if someone walks up and says, hey, I got $10,000, so I'm going to give it to this local, to us, and then we give it directly to the musicians to play at some local spot, And then these people who are donors, they have a vested interest where they say, hey, come on down. I actually sponsor this gig at the cafe down the street. And then all of a sudden it becomes like a hot spot, you know? And we want those little hot spots everywhere because our real goal is to keep musicians working and at a decent salary. $100 is not breaking the bank for everybody, but as you know, $100 gig, if someone's like, I got $100 gig, and you say, well, yeah, that's great. I mean, or it's kind of the bare minimum now that people should accept, for many reasons. Because as you know, jazz musicians shoot themselves in the foot. Like, oh, it's $100 gig, but I'll do it for 75. And then you literally just, okay, you got your gig. So now everyone's going to hear you solo on all the things you are. Okay, great. But you actually just stole 25. So you just, let's do the math. If it's $100 gig and you say, oh, me and my trio will do it for 75 ahead. You just stole $75 weekly. So that's $75 times 52 per year from the jazz community. That's what you just did by undercutting your friends. Yeah, you know what I mean? Man. So it's like it's so stupid. And honestly, with our organization, to tell you a little bit more about how we approach it, is like, some people say, how can we get involved? We want to be with Keyedup, or something. And I say, well, why don't you go down the street and see if you can start a scene at your local spot without mentioning Keyedup? Because if you walk into a place and you say, hey, I can get $8,000 a year from Keyedup, but what if they said, what if you walk in and they say, well, we can pay you $100 a person before you mention Keyedup? So then what you do is you take that $100 gig and then you go down the street even more and you go to another place and you say, what can you pay me? And they say, well, we only have $50 a person, but we'd love to have you. Then you call me up, right. And then you just also doubled your weekly compensation and for that of your friends. Right. So some people don't get it, right? They're like, oh, well, there's this organization Keyedup and they can pay for half of it. It's like, no, we can't. Like, you just blew your load. I don't know if this is a children's program, but it's like, I don't think too many 2-year-olds are watching, but you just blew your proverbial load because you're excited that we might help you out. But actually, you just shot all your friends in the foot. You could have doubled up, you could have doubled the amount of money that you're making weekly and for your friends.
Right, so, man. It sounds like it's to me, like this is a call also to get musicians very involved in the business side of things and really talking to places and really knowing how to talk about these things, like understanding what do you think is the best way because we know that the whole pricing situation in the jazz scene and music in general has been an issue that has affected all of us greatly. What do you suggest for musicians that would like to approach Keyedup to subsidize half of their pay at this gig or whatever? Should they talk to you guys more? Do you guys do like a session with them and explain how things work, or what? How does it work too?
Yeah, we don't. That's just not a bad idea. Maybe you guys could facilitate that for us. Do an online thing and see if people wanna join and learn. But what happens normally is that there's actually different cases. As I'm thinking about it, there's totally different cases. Like, some people are totally blind and they say, hey, how do I join Keyedup? And I'm like, well, it doesn't really work like that, but let me know. You should go into your neighborhood. We like it. I would like it if, we could sponsor something right next to your house, Abel, right next to your house, Peter. It's like one of those things where if it's a local vibe, you have more incentive to be like, hey, come down the street. We're playing tonight. and you create like this local community vibe that's not on, West 4th Street. You know what I mean? It's like it's outside of the normal jazz areas. But yeah, what we tell people, some of them, like I said, are blind, where they say, how do we join your program? And what I normally tell them is, well, some of them just think we're kind of a booking organization. Like, hey, can I get some of these gigs? I'm like, thank God I'm not a booking cat, because I have a lot of respect for people, even if I don't like their decisions by not hiring me. I do sympathize with their task. So we're not a booking agency. We're kind of an empowerment agency, where we say, hey, listen, go down the street. There's got to be some place that's cool. Maybe they have a corner. There's no tables, and you could picture something in there. And there's a lot to think about when you approach these places. It's like, okay, you walk into a place. Are the acoustics going to be like super hot? Like, you don't want to go into a place that has like marble floors, marble walls, and glass windows, like floor to ceiling. And you'd be like, oh, I think I could bring my John Coltrane, 1966 quartet. And so, like, because some people, they're like putting the square hole in the circle, like they're like, I do 1966 sheets of sound Coltrane shit. But it's like, okay, well, these people are eating, it's like a Lady and the Tramp situation. Like, they're like little romantic dinners for two, and you guys are trying to like blow your brains out in front of them. It's like, okay, so you have to realize that the cafe down the street might not be the place for like this crazy ass jam session, but it might be the place to do a cute little duo, where you get a piano player or a bassist and a keyboard or whatever. So I think that musicians need to kind of recognize the fact that these businesses, they have a vibe of their own. To respect the vibe of these community places and say, okay, I really think that I could augment the vibe of this place. And especially if you approach them in a cool way, where you say, hey, listen, what's the slowest night of the week for you guys? Mondays or Tuesdays? Like, I think that if you guys have a little money, I think that you can make your money back on my group. And we can get a little scene happening. I can get my friends. I got a lot of friends in the neighborhood, whatever. You just kind of approach them and say, I think if we try this for a month, I think you'll like what you'll find. So there has to be something of a benefit for the place too. It's like a lot of musicians kind of are only thinking about themselves, not necessarily because they are selfish. Perhaps they are, but it's like, they don't realize it's like, no, it takes two to tango, and you're going to be tangoing with the owner of this place. Like, you're not just going in there and be like, hey, I'm the greatest, I can play the best jazz licks ever, and give me money. It's like, no, you got to go in there and say, I think I can make your place better on certain nights of the week. I don't want to take up too much space or too much of your time, blah, blah, blah. If you approach people like that with respect, then you'll be more pleasantly surprised. And you're still going to, 10 out of 11 places are still going to say no. But if you have like ideas, like, I think that in a month, I'll be selling enough cocktails, my friends will drink enough or whatever, that the trio will pay for itself, that kind of thing. And I think that's when people should approach Keyedup and say, hey, I got this spot. It's kind of cool. We're starting to get a little vibe here. Like, can you guys maybe help out with maybe $100 extra a week? And that's the point where we say, all right, I'm like, are they cool to you? That's what I almost always say. I'm like, are they nice to you? Like, did they feed you? did they give you beers or did they give you a hard time or whatever? And if the place is cool, then I ask for permission. I'm not like the buck doesn't stop with me, but I ask for permission. And generally, especially if there's money in the budget, then it's like, all right, yeah, you got it. So
That's cool, man.
yeah.
That's some good business acumen, like, advice and suggestions. I mean, often thinking about how it benefits the venue and club, is
Hmm.
something that might be passed over a lot of times when we're asking places like, can I have, basically essentially, can I have a gig here, right? Like, that's not
Yeah.
having that approach is definitely important. And
Uh-huh. Something else I recommend too is to patronize the spot. If you don't hang at a spot, then why do you want to play there anyways? You know what I mean? So, unless it's
Right.
like, all right, these guys pay 200 on, every Saturday or 200 a person or something. It's like, all right, they have money. Obviously, I'm not going to come and eat $80 steak and wine dinner every night. But maybe step up to the bar, man. Just kind of check out the place. Be like, is this a place where I want me and my friends to hang on a Tuesday night? Have a beer, order a cocktail, whatever. Sit there, soak in the vibe, and then be like, that's when you start to learn the feeling of a place. You hear the bartender chattering with the servers. Maybe the owner walks in, and you get the vibe like, oh, is the owner cool? Like, do the servers and staff react well to the owner, or are they like, put your button up and
Yeah.
like, is it like are they afraid of the owner or are they happy to see the owner, like that kind of stuff. And then you'd be like, man, this place is kind of cool, I like the staff is kind of cool. And then you ask the bartender, you're like, hey, you guys do music here? No, actually I think you guys should. No, but I'd love to, or something like that. Be like, wow, I think I can bring some vibe in here. How do I get in touch? Like, you guys have a general manager, whatever. And you'll be surprised that, if you can get somebody on your team, on your side or whatever, that they'll help out, maybe give you a good recommendation. You know, you just had a beer, leave a $5 tip on your way out too, because maybe
That's right.
maybe that $5 tip will turn into $100 gig every single Friday night for you. So there,
That's right.
and then here's something for the business kids too. Why don't you keep your receipt? Because maybe you'll write that off in taxes as a research and development for your business. Oh, so it's like,
All those
wow,
years.
The
did we just go have a hamburger and a beer and then write it off on taxes? Yeah, well, why not? These
Yeah.
business
That's right.
executives are going out to strip clubs and entertaining
That's right.
Japanese business people, and they write off tens of thousands of dollars,
right.
man, every single year. So if we can write off a beer at some place that we want to maybe do music at, and we actually, I'm not saying to lie about it, but that's research and development for your business. So
Yeah, man, this is I think you touched on a lot of topics that we lack as musicians. Sometimes, we get so much into the music that we forget that, like you said, it takes two to tango. Like like really
Mhm.
caring about the business side of things, instead of like, man, I need to get paid. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
all these
Mm,
things, and really forgetting that we are people, and there is relationships with people that you build, and you don't get
Hmm.
there and play your, like you said, your avant-garde set in front of like people having dinner, like things that I think these
sensibility.
are basically topics that I feel like we have a gap as specifically talking about the jazz community of musicians, that we some of us that we have, that might have the entrepreneurial spirit, we go out there to places and we start. I really dig the whole encouragement for musicians to really get involved in their communities. I think that's really
Yes.
a key point that you
Hmm.
guys in Keyedup are looking out for. It's not, oh, here's a gig, can you, yeah, we'll give you money. No, it's like, this cat knows the owner, they know the venue, they know each other, they really want to make things work, work out. And financially might not be working out right now, but hey, they have something happening, That's
and you
really
create
wonderful.
something together. You create something together with the place.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think personally, I've had, when I really connected with the, business owner in that way, I've probably the longest lasting gigs that I've had. When the business owner sees that constantly people's coming to check out the music and they're spending money, and it's, I'm there on time. I'm there on time. I come rehearsed. You know what I mean? Like that's the synergy, right? Like
More of a partnership at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and treating the staff with respect too. 'Cause, I mean, you're going into someone's house. If you're going into it, especially if it's a mom and pop shop, it's like this is not just a place where you come in and be like, I'm the shit. I'm like the greatest musician ever. Like, no, you walk in, you should shake hands with the janitor, the bartender, everybody. Be like, hey, my name is Abel. I'm here to let's have some fun tonight.
Yeah. One thing that I've picked up through doing gigs is, man, talk to the waiters. Be cool with them, because they're like the ones that, they'll be bringing you the beer or they'll be bringing you the food.
Exactly.
Know what I mean? Like, hey, sometimes I've created really cool relationships with waiters. I do not, by any means, or we should not by any means think like, oh, they're just the waiters. It's like, no, man, they're working there with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're part of, it's similar.
If anything, they're the ones at the end of the night, the manager says, wait, what'd you think of the band? They'd be like, oh, those guys were such dicks. Oh, they're such jerks. Or
so true.
Or the other way around, they'd be like, yo, they were awesome. I love Abel. And also
he played a song. I asked for a song.
They got a 50 in their pocket too, like get a little tip that you tip
That's
them
right.
too.
Yeah, I've been in cases where I work with them and, hey man, this man is trying to, hear this song. Can you play it for them? Sure, man. You know what I mean? Like, and we work to get, I don't know. It's very interesting to hear that, man, I like to ask you about how do you balance your time? Because you're also a terrific bass player, man. How do you balance your time being involved so much into one organization, into another one, into playing the bass? And you know what I mean? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, like I said, it's all music. So the way I look at it, I'm like, I just do one thing. So, but I really, like when a 5-year-old kid, your mother. The mother asked the kid when he comes inside, like, what did you do today, honey? And he's like, I was a fireman, and then I was a postman, and then like he's just like does all this crazy play shit all day, doing all these fun things. And I kind of feel like I'm like that in a certain sense where I'm like, what am I gonna be today? But I know it's gonna be in music. So sometimes I try to skip the routine because my quote unquote routine is obviously, all right, you wake up, you maybe make a little coffee and you check the emails if anyone emailed you last night while you were asleep. So it's like, so sometimes I'm like, you know what? No computer, just pick up the bass and start playing, And then there's other days where I'm like, I have something to do. You wake up and at 10 a.m., you got to be up in Harlem to meet some teachers or whatever. But it's all music, and it's a fun day where I'm like, wow, I had a really busy day today. But I'm like, wow, man, I was up in Harlem talking to some teachers. Then I went and taught a lesson to. I had this one student when I was in New York more. It's like, and then you go home, rest, and maybe play a little bit, and then go play a gig or something like that. But really, people say there's never enough time in a day, which is true. But I also could look at it the other way. It's like, man, there's a lot of time in one day. I mean, I could start learning Japanese and I could get pretty far. Like if I just was like, all right, tomorrow I'm going to start learning how to say certain stuff in Japanese. And by the end of the day, after like 10 hours, I might actually know how to be like, my name is Rob Duguay and I'm a bass player. You know what I mean? Like you could like learn stuff. Just like Quincy Jones, man, is obviously he's like a hero to probably to everybody unless they're complete jerks. But Quincy Jones said that he's like, dude, you should never be bored. He's like, you can learn new languages. You can learn how to cook. Like you can learn how to do stuff. So there's so much time, you know what I mean? And, we've all done our, proverbial, it seems like we've all done our proverbial like 10,000 hours and, that kind of thing where, you have your days and weeks and months of shedding and practicing, performing. So after a while, I'm like, I don't necessarily, there are some days where I don't touch my instrument, and I don't necessarily, like some people, I feel so guilty. I went to the beach and I didn't practice my guitar. I'm like, I really have never felt like that. I'm like, man, I went to the beach yesterday. I didn't do shit. It was awesome. Right. So I don't have that, like necessarily have that kind of guilt where I like, oh, I didn't practice and blah, blah, blah. Because I do believe that you can grow away from your instrument, even musically. Like the next time you come back, then you have like new ideas. Of course, you got to keep your fingers moving, because if you go up with some great musicians, you're going to be hurting. But
right, the physical parts.
Is a real thing. That's real. But I do believe that you can grow musically away from your instrument, and even actually recommend it. Some people are like, oh, I can't go on vacation because I can't bring my trombone to Aruba or something like that. It's like, hey man, the bone's gonna be there when you get back, and you need that time to reflect, and you never know what you're gonna learn down in Aruba that'll change your mind musically. Because when it comes down to it, we're just people, that are expressing ourselves. So if you're not growing as a person and getting new experiences, man, you're gonna have nothing to say anyways. We don't learn what to say in our bedrooms. If we stay in our bedrooms for 10 hours a day practicing, it's all right, you're technically proficient, but you're not really saying anything that's cool.
That's right.
Yeah, or related to people sometimes, for sure.
yeah, that people can relate to. I mean, we're trying to bring people into our corner. So if you don't know how to talk to people, and through your instrument, then that's another thing. But
yeah, for sure. Well, that's really great to hear. I mean, it's like oftentimes when we ask that question of like, how do you manage your time? A lot of times it becomes more numeric. Like, oh, I wake up at this time from this time to this. But I think within like musicians and especially jazz like musicians, it's more like how you spend your time and how you think about you spend your time. That's like more important, right?
Yeah. I have some friends that are very diligent. Like they have their practice schedule on their wall behind them and stuff. And I've never been like that. And I'm not saying that that's not a good thing. Because some of these guys, I'm like, what? You did what today? They're like, yeah, I practiced Muay Thai from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then I was like, dude, I was... and then I cooked breakfast and then I shedded. I did my hour and 15-minute routine, and they have like the routine, like if they only have X amount of time to do exactly this. And dude, they're amazing musicians and people. And I'm like, I'm not like that.
Different.
I'm not a hero in terms of like, like if you asked me what I did yesterday, you might be like, oh, you're lazy as hell. You know what I mean? Like, so in terms of like my time management, I'm like I'm a cat in that sense, like a real cat. You know what I mean? Like I go through points of great action and little sleep. And then I go through times of just like, dude, I'm gonna purposefully be lazy today, or go to the beach or something like that. You know, when you're on these tours, man, like you go tour in Europe and you're doing these like one-nighters and stuff, you're not getting any sleep. You're going from place to place, and it's like, it's kind of wild. And you have to be full of energy to do it. But then when I get home from tour, I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I just want to, I'm going to go cook dinner and stay in. You know, I'm not going to do any work, composition, nothing.
Yeah.
Man, whatever you doing is working out.
It's working.
You know, you're like the president of this organization, and then you work for this other one, and you know, so everything is working out, man. And like you said, I think, yeah, we're all kind of different. We all got to find the way that
That's right.
we do things, you know, but always learning, you know, from people like you, and you know, the people that are doing things. I really you know, like your vibe, man, of like really, you know, musicians taking care of themselves, you know, and creating a community, and just being like, don't expect to just get that call, you know, that we always expecting to, you know, if it comes, it's great. But don't just sit there and wait, you know, just go out and try to find some gigs yourself, and, you know, learn from from our jazz heroes too, of course, and all that, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about this a couple years ago, but you think about somebody like Dizzy, just to name Dizzy, but obviously there's tons more, Art Blakey and Duke Ellington, all these people. So everybody nowadays is like, man, where's the gigs? There used to be so many gigs. It's like, but dude, you know how charismatic those guys were? Like, those guys would just show up in a small town in France, and the next year there would be a festival named after them. They'd be like, please come back. We'll make a festival for you, Mr. Dizzy. Like, you know, how much money do you need? He's, I don't know. I'll be close by, so just get me $10,000 and I'll bring a quintet from, you know, 2 hours away. I'm already going to be in Cannes, so why don't I play in Antibes? But dude, they were so charismatic and so caring to people. They were really ambassadors of culture, and they weren't selfish with their time. You know, like, they hung out with people, they signed autographs, they, you know, they really created. And then so after that, there's this wake, because there's like, they created so much work for themselves. It's ridiculous. There wasn't enough time in the year for Duke Ellington, man. Like, he was, you guys know, he was on the road like more than 300 days a year with a big band. Like, that's insane.
So ridiculous.
But he created a wake of like, everybody wanted Duke. So like, and after that, it's like, well, yeah, okay, there's the ballroom of Toledo or something, but you're not Duke. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, okay, there are these venues that they played at, and like, okay, so you call them up, you're like, hey, can I get a gig? And they're like, who are you? They're like, I don't know you, but I know Duke because he came to my town and we had beers together, like whatever. So right. I really recommend, you know, for musicians to just be people too. It's like, okay, put the instrument down, go to your local bar, meet a couple of the guys that are hanging there, say hello to the guy next to you, and you have no idea what this guy might be doing. They might have just started a music studio. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a musician. Oh, really? I just started a studio right around the corner. Or God knows what else. Even if they say that they're a lawyer, it's like, oh, well, yeah, man, you guys should, if you guys want to get involved, maybe your law firm wants to sponsor something. It could look good for your law firm to sponsor this idea that I have for music for kids in the community or something. Like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we would give a couple grand for that.
Right, that's right.
Shit like that, man. Because like, I feel like musicians just need to create more work for themselves, and it's not necessarily going to come from staying in your bedroom practicing scales.
Particularly won't come from there.
Yeah, being active, creating relationships with the community around you. I think everyone knows that, like, place down the street, you know, if there's some homework from this, you know, it's definitely go do that, you know, go check it out, you know, get to know the people working there and the business owner, and
Mhm.
make it happen. I think we
For
all
sure.
experience that, here for sure.
Yeah, man.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Man,
Yeah.
Rob, it's been
thank you, man.
real, man. For sure.
Yeah, you guys
Yeah.
are awesome, man. Thanks for having me on. We can do it again sometime. It'll be fun.
Oh, most
We
definitely.
could be asking you more and more questions, but
We can talk for days. I know that.
Really
But we
appreciate your
really
time,
appreciate it.
Rob.
Yeah.
Thank you
definitely.
both so much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can't wait to see what you're doing next, man.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're getting yourself into that scene in Mexico City, and I can't wait
Amen.
what you're already thinking, and doing. That's really cool, man.
What-
Necesitas pasar por acá, amigo. Come
Hey,
on.
amigo, mi amigo.
Tocamos. Tocamos
Yes,
weight.
dude. Yes, dude. Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. Yes.
So I look
let's
forward to
definitely.
creating music with you guys and seeing what else
Yes.
we could do for the community
Man,
together.
Peter, we gotta go down to Mexico City now, man.
I know, right? Now
we
it really
both
has to
gotta go.
happen. We talked about this before.
I'll talk
There's
to
no
some
snow here.
friends.
There's no snow.
Oh wait, there's no snow all over the world. I thought if New York gets snow, everybody gets snow. No,
yeah.
it's probably
we got
nice
to.
weather in Mexico City right now, right?
It's slick. Yeah, we're talking somewhere between. Yeah, it's around 75 today.
Oh my God. Well,
It's
how
been
can
getting a little chilly at night, 55 or something at
Oh
night.
my
but-
God, man. Yeah.
just to
Beautiful stuff.
wrap up the podcast episode, where can people follow you, and what we like them to do in order to support these organizations?
Yeah, well, the most important thing you can do is donate to Keyedup.org. That's our website for Jazz Generation, and that goes directly to musicians, either for performing in local venues, mom and pop shops, or performing and teaching our youth through our youth orchestra and our field trips that we give to students to come and learn about the music. Every close to, I think it's like 75% of all donations just go straight into a musician's pocket because we have very little overhead.
Right.
And so that's Keyedup.org. That's really where things are happening.
Great.
And we'd love for people to get involved. Tell us about a new venue. Maybe some people are looking, they have a little venue and they're looking for musicians to come in. We can set them up.
That's nice.
That kind of stuff. So
Great.
keep taking care of each other. That's it.
Yeah. I know I've been enjoying reading your Facebook posts about stories from the Jazz Standard.
Yeah, man.
That stuff is really cool.
Yeah,
too.
we got to find a new location to keep the magic happening.
Yeah,
That's right.
For sure.
Yep.
Well, thank you again, and
Yes, man.
You're welcome, guys. Thanks for inviting me. It's a great honor.
If you like what you heard, make sure to follow him on social media. We included all the links in our description. If you want to follow Yardbird Entertainment to see what we're up to and maybe some of the virtual concerts coming up, be sure to subscribe to us on our website, www.yardbirdent.com.